Welcome back, viewers. You're watching WION World is One. This is World DNA, the show that gets you ahead of the rest. I'm Shivan Chandna.
And I'm Hem Khorsara, and on the show today, Russian and Ukrainian negotiators met in Istanbul for their first peace talks in more than 7 weeks, after which Ukraine proposed Moscow and Kyiv to hold a leaders' summit to end the war by the end of next month. Russia, on the other hand, says that the meeting between Putin and Zelensky can only happen once terms of an agreement are discussed. Of course, how things pan out there, we'll have to wait and see.
Also on World DNA, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer are set to sign a landmark free trade agreement today. This deal is expected to boost bilateral trade by $32.3 billion annually and create thousands of jobs in both the countries. We'll bring you the latest on that. Let's start with the headlines.
They're going to pay the United States of America 100% of the cost of all military equipment, and much of it will go to Ukraine.
Donald Trump touts a recent deal between the United States and NATO, where European allies would purchase weapons and send them to Ukraine as it fights Russia.
United States announces the approval of $322 million in arms sales to bolster Ukraine's air defenses and its armored combat vehicles. Announcement comes after the US temporarily halted some weapons shipments to Ukraine earlier.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer set to sign a landmark free trade agreement today. The deal is expected to boost bilateral trade by $32.3 billion annually and create thousands of jobs in both countries.
Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Kazem Gharibabadi says Tehran has agreed to allow a technical team from the UN nuclear watchdog to visit within 2 to 3 weeks to discuss relations between IAEA and Iran.
Hamas confirms that it has responded to an Israeli proposal for a 60-day ceasefire in Gaza after more than 2 weeks of indirect talks in Qatar failed to yield a truce.
White House pulls out all stops to promote claims that Barack Obama headed a treasonous conspiracy against Donald Trump. Intelligence Chief Tulsi Gabbard claims there had been a years-long coup by Obama.
Columbia University says it has reached a deal with the Trump administration to resolve federal probes into allegations that it violated anti-discrimination laws. The university will pay $200 million fine to the government.
The European Central Bank is holding interest rates steady, pausing after months of cuts as trade tensions and economic uncertainty cloud the Eurozone outlook. A cautious tone signals no rush to resume easing.
In another injury blow for India, Rishabh Pant retires hurt after injuring his right toe while batting. Pant received treatment on field but could not continue.
Now, Kiev is proposing to Moscow to hold a leaders' summit to end the war between Russia and Ukraine by the end of next month.
Now, Kyiv says it is ready for a ceasefire and has called on Russia to demonstrate what it calls a constructive and realistic approach.
Priority number one is to organize a meeting of the leaders of presidents, where participation of President Trump and Erdogan will be most valuable. A real ceasefire and end to all strikes on civilian infrastructure. These can be a crucial first steps towards lasting peace. We propose to the Russian side to hold such a meeting of leaders until the end of August.
This after Russian and Ukrainian negotiators met in Istanbul for their first peace talks in more than 7 weeks, with Moscow under pressure from US President Donald Trump to strike a deal or face tough new sanctions.
On Wednesday, Donald Trump approved $322 million in arms sales to bolster Ukraine's air defenses and its armored combat vehicles. Russia says that a meeting between Putin and Zelensky can only happen once terms of an agreement are discussed.
In order for such a meeting between Putin and Zelensky to take place, it is necessary to work out the terms of the agreement in advance and understand what to discuss at this meeting. And in fact, at this meeting, it is not necessary to discuss the agreement, but to finish it, to sign it, you know. As we say, the end of the matter. It makes no sense to meet to discuss it all over again from scratch.
Putin turned down a previous challenge from Zelensky to meet him in person and said he does not see Zelensky as a legitimate leader because Ukraine, which is under martial law, did not hold new elections when Zelensky's 5-year mandate expired last year.
During the peace talks in Istanbul, Turkish Foreign Minister urged both sides to end the war as soon as possible, adding that only a ceasefire can pave the way to peace. Russia proposed Ukraine ceasefire lasting between 24 to 48 hours to allow troops from both sides to recover the dead and wounded.
At 40 minutes, the meeting was even shorter than the two sides' previous encounters on the 16th of May and on the 2nd of June, which lasted a combined total of under 3 hours. Russia and Ukraine exchanged more prisoners of war on Wednesday. Zelensky said that Ukraine brought home more than 1,000 prisoners of war from Russia, many of them seriously wounded. No breakthroughs have been made since the talks first took place on the 16th of May, with exchange of prisoners and soldiers' bodies the only achievements to be noted here. Russia has proposed sending Kiev bodies of 3,000 Ukrainian soldiers.
Now, Hamas has confirmed that it has submitted its response to an Israeli proposal for a 60-day Gaza ceasefire to the negotiators.
In a statement, the Palestinian militant group said that it has just submitted its response and that of the Palestinian factions to the ceasefire proposal to the mediators. Then on the other hand, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said that US West Asia envoy Steve Witkoff is traveling to Europe for meetings with key regional leaders aimed at advancing a ceasefire agreement in Gaza and securing the release of hostages held by Hamas. Now, according to Axios, Witkoff is expected to arrive in Rome today for meetings with Israeli Minister of Strategic Affairs Ron Dermer and a senior Qatari official. If talks progress, he could travel on to Doha later in the week in a push to finalize a deal.
Special Envoy Witkoff is headed to Europe, where he will meet with key leaders from the Middle East to discuss the ongoing ceasefire proposal to end this conflict in Gaza and to release the hostages. These are very sensitive negotiations that are currently taking place.
With no let-up in deadly Israeli strikes across the territory, getting aid to more than 2 million people who need it has become a key issue in the conflict. And doctors, aid agencies have reported increasing cases of malnutrition and starvation. The humanitarian organizations said in a joint statement that warehouses with tons of supplies were sitting untouched while people were trapped in a cycle of hope and heartbreak, waiting for assistance and ceasefire.
The 111 signatories, including Doctors Without Borders, Save the Children and Oxfam, they've called for an immediate negotiated ceasefire, the opening of all land crossings and the free flow of aid through UN-led mechanisms.
Meanwhile, Israel has hit back at growing international criticism that is behind chronic food shortage in Gaza, instead accusing Hamas of deliberately creating a humanitarian crisis in the Palestinian territory.
In Gaza today, there is no famine caused by Israel. There is, however, a man-made shortage engineered by Hamas. Now, too often, the full story is not being told. This suffering exists because Hamas has created it. The suffering exists because Hamas has made it so.
Furthermore, Israeli President Isaac Herzog was visiting troops in Gaza, maintained that Israel was acting according to international law, quote unquote, while Hamas was trying to sabotage aid distribution in a bid to obstruct the Israeli military campaign that began more than 21 months ago.
We are acting here according to international law. We are providing humanitarian aid according to international law. The ones trying to sabotage this aid are Hamas and its people. It's Hamas' spin at our expense to prevent our forces from dismantling infrastructure that could harm us and our citizens.
In other developments, more than 70 Israeli lawmakers passed a motion urging the government to impose sovereignty over the West Bank, though the symbolic move does not affect the Palestinian territory's legal status. Turkey has branded it as an illegitimate and provocative gesture aimed at undermining peace efforts.
Meanwhile, members of Israel's ultra-Orthodox Jewish community staged protests against a contentious conscription law, underscoring political divisions within the Israeli government. Protesters voiced opposition to the arrest of 3 community members accused of deserting mandatory military service. Police intervened to disperse demonstrators, resulting in scuffles. The White House has pulled out all the stops to promote claims that former President Barack Obama headed a treasonous conspiracy against Donald Trump.
Now, Trump's intelligence chief, Tulsi Gabbard, told a White House press briefing that there had been a years-long coup by Obama. The extraordinary narrative essentially rehashed Trump's long-standing argument that investigations into Russia's multi-layered attempts to disrupt the 2016 election, where he beat Hillary Clinton, were a hoax against him.
Now, Gabbard touted newly declassified intelligence that she said provided irrefutable evidence that Obama had ordered intelligence assessments to be manipulated to accuse Russia of election interference to help Donald Trump. The Justice Department announced the formation of a strike force to examine the allegations with utmost seriousness.
I want to also point out.
Look, the president has made it clear that he wanted these documents to be declassified. He wanted the American people to see the truth, and now he wants those who perpetuated these lies and this scandal to be held accountable. As for what accountability looks like, as the director said, it's in the Department of Justice's hands, and we trust them to move this ball forward.
As the Trump administration repeated claims about Obama, questions about Epstein came up. Asked if she can rule out that Epstein was connected to any kind of intelligence, Gabbard said she hadn't seen evidence or information that reflected that.
I haven't seen any evidence or information that reflects that. If anything comes before me that changes that in any way, support the president's statement loud and clear. If any credible evidence comes forward, he wants the American people to see it.
And meanwhile, a federal judge rejected a Trump administration request to unseal transcripts from grand jury investigation of Epstein years ago in Florida, though a similar request still remains pending for records in New York. U.S. District Judge Robin Rosenberg in West Palm Beach said that the request to release grand jury documents does not meet any of the extraordinary exceptions under federal law that could make them public. The Justice Department last week asked the judge to release records to quell a storm among Trump supporters who believe that there was a conspiracy to protect Epstein's clients, conceal videos of crimes being committed and other evidence.
House Speaker Mike Johnson said that the House does not need to vote this week on releasing records related to the case, adding that Trump administration is already doing everything within its power to release them. The comments come as Democratic Party repeatedly tried to force votes on the matter, casting it as an issue of trust in the government.
Now, according to reports, Attorney General Pam Bondi informed Trump in May that his name appeared in documents reviewed as part of the DOJ's investigation into the Epstein case. The disclosure came during what officials described as a routine briefing, also attended by Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche. Trump was told that numerous high-profile individuals were mentioned in the Epstein files, which included Univer's unverified claims the department deemed not credible, among them those involving Trump.
And for more on this, our correspondent Susan Tehrani has sent us this report. Listen to this.
Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard and the White House are accusing former President Barack Obama of orchestrating a false narrative that Russia interfered in the 2016 election to help Donald Trump. At a press briefing, Gabbard claimed that she had new evidence showing Obama personally directed the creation of a misleading intelligence report and said that she had referred him to the Justice Department for possible prosecution. She declassified a 2016 House intelligence report that challenges the conclusion that Russia favored Donald Trump. However, she did not cite any specific new evidence publicly and instead called on the media to review the documents. One declassified email shows officials preparing a broad assessment of Russian activities, but does not prove that Obama himself manipulated the outcome. The CIA has reaffirmed its original findings, defending its assessment. It's unclear whether or not the DOJ will act, but the move escalates partisan tension and raises legal questions about how far this investigation can and will go. Susan Tehrani reporting from New York for WION World is One.
Now, French President Emmanuel Macron and First Lady Brigitte Macron have filed a defamation lawsuit in the United States.
Well, this lawsuit is against controversial right-wing commentator Candace Owens. The suit targets a series of claims Owens made in her podcast. And Owens said that Brigitte Macron was born male under the name Jean-Michel, and the Macrons call the statements outlandish, defamatory and far-fetched fictions and say that the falsehoods have caused reputational damage and relentless online harassment.
Owens did not stop at claims about gender identity of France's First Lady. According to the filing, she also claimed the French president and his wife are blood relatives and went on to suggest that Macron was a product of CIA experiments.
Well, the couple has denied all these allegations categorically, and under US defamation law, public figures must prove that defendant knew the claims were false or acted with reckless disregard for the truth. Despite legal challenges, Macrons are choosing to take this allegation head-on, with their lawyers saying the President and First Lady of France are willing to travel to Delaware and testify in person. The Macrons filing emphasizes that their relationship remained within the bounds of the law. And Thailand has decided to degrade its diplomatic ties with neighboring nation of Cambodia.
This after a Thai soldier lost a leg in a landmine blast on its border with Cambodia. Acting Thai Prime Minister Phumtham Vishayachai accused Cambodia of laying new landmines in the disputed area, which was the scene of the deadly military clashes in May. Thailand government expelled the Cambodian ambassador, also moved to recall its ambassador to Phnom Penh.
Phumtham, who also serves as Deputy Prime Minister and Acting Interior Minister, stated that intelligence from the Ministry of Defence confirmed the patrol unit had struck a newly laid mine. Local report says 5 army personnel are injured, with 1 soldier sustaining severe injuries to his right leg from stepping on the explosive device.
The Thailand-Cambodia border has been the focal point of recent tensions, skirmishes between the two South Asian neighbours. These tensions escalated following a deadly clash in May, where a Cambodian soldier was killed in a disputed area.
Both nations have reinforced their military presence along the border, and Thailand has closed several border crossings that the two countries have contested sovereignty over undemarcated points along their shared border when France mapped out Cambodia in 1907 when it was a French colony.
Now, the world's highest court has delivered a powerful message to the global community. Climate change is not only a crisis, but an urgent and existential threat.
The International Court of Justice, which is the top judicial body of the United Nations, in a landmark judgment has ruled that countries have a legal obligation to prevent further environmental harm. The court also emphasized that the climate system is an integral and vitally important part of the environment and one that must be protected not only for us but for generations yet to come.
The court notes that the consequences of climate change are severe and far-reaching. They affect both natural ecosystems and human populations. These consequences underscore the urgent and existential threat posed by climate change.
In its ruling, the court also made it clear that greenhouse gas emissions are unequivocally caused by human activity and have far-reaching cross-border consequences.
And for nations that signed the Paris Agreement, there's no room for complacency. The ICJ stated that their climate pledges, which is known as nationally determined contributions, must be progressive and reflect the highest possible ambition. The message from The Hague is clear. The time to act is now and the responsibility lies with all of us. A number of people had gathered outside The Hague to watch the ruling on the big screens, and many of them took a sigh of relief and termed the court ruling as a step in the right direction.
The obligation to formulate and publish national and
like a big relief like a big full circle moment that has just occurred, but then there's another circle yet to happen, meaning that everything that has led to this moment has been really important. It's so encouraging to see the Pacific Island students, but also our oceanic leaders that have come and, that have come and fought for their voices at the ICJ for their advisory opinion.
UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres also celebrated the ruling by the world's highest court, calling it a victory for our planet for climate justice. In his speech, Guterres also praised Vanuatu, the small Pacific Island nation that spearheaded the case at the International Court of Justice.
That contribute to climate change as a result of the emission of GHGs, including both consumption and production activities. It also bears noting in this context.
I welcome that the International Court of Justice has issued its historic advisory opinion. They made clear that all states are obligated under international law to protect the global climate system. This is a victory for our planet, for climate justice, and for the power of young people to make a difference. Young Pacific Islanders initiated this call for humanity to the world, and the world must respond. As the ICJ has laid out today, the 1.5-degree goal of the Paris Agreement must be the basis of all climate policies under the current climate change treaty regime.
And with that, it's time now for a short break.
Don't go anywhere. This is World DNA. On the other side, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is expected to hold bilateral talks with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. Both leaders will sign the much-anticipated FTA free trade agreement, which was announced in May. We bring you the details.
The UPSTF has arrested a man running a fake embassy in Ghaziabad, which falls under the National Capital Region. We'll get you all the details on this on the other side.
The Earth is sending distress signals. Wildfires, droughts, and melting glaciers. Can we reverse the damage? Explore the harrowing effects of climate change. It's a wake-up call. Global emergency. Climate Tracker on WION World is One.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the U.S.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of.
A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA.
Join the conversation.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in. Where darkness hides behind every corner. Where the truth is stranger than fiction. A show that dives deep into the stories which shock and mystify. Unsolved murders. Psychopaths who defy explanation. International war crimes. And millions swindled in financial fraud. The victims, the accused, and the sinister plot. Prime Crime is your front row seat to darkness.
From the bustling trading floors of Wall Street to the vibrant exchanges of Asian stock markets, WION breaks it down for you to make sense of what's happening, as we reveal the key factors behind events, strategic battles, and the game-changing business decisions that shape the world. We bring you all of this and more on World Business Watch. WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION, World is One.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
Welcome back, viewers. You're watching World DNA with him. I'm Shivan. Let's start with the headlines at this hour.
Prime Minister Modi receives heartfelt reception from the Indian diaspora and the United Kingdom, says, "I'm touched by the warm welcome." Prime Minister Modi and his British counterpart Keir Starmer to sign a landmark free trade agreement today.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un watches an artillery firing exercise that saw his troops practice firing into the sea against an enemy approaching from the coast.
A Saudi delegation visiting Damascus seals investment and partnership deals valued at nearly $6 billion to help rebuild war-battered Syria.
They're going to pay the United States of America 100% of the cost of all military equipment, and much of it will go to Ukraine.
Donald Trump touts a recent deal between the US and NATO where European allies would purchase weapons and send them to Ukraine as it fights Russia.
Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Kazem Gharibabadi says that Tehran has agreed to allow a technical team from the UN nuclear watchdog to visit within 2 to 3 weeks to discuss relations between the IAEA and the Islamic Republic.
Hamas confirms that it has responded to an Israeli proposal for a 60-day ceasefire in Gaza after more than 2 weeks of indirect talks in Qatar, which have failed to yield a truce yet.
White House pulls out all stops to promote claims that Barack Obama headed a treasonous conspiracy against Donald Trump. Intelligence Chief Tulsi Gabbard claims that there had been a years-long coup by Obama.
President Trump's trade pact with Japan is giving fresh life to stalled US-EU negotiations, with Japan agreeing to lower auto tariffs. Europe is pushing to avoid steep US levies by fast-tracking its own deal.
Marcus Rashford joins Barcelona on a season-long loan from Manchester United with an option to buy. The 27-year-old is the first English player to sign for Barcelona since 1986.
Here, please.
And Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer are set to now sign a landmark free trade agreement that's going to happen today.
Now, this deal is expected to boost bilateral trade and create thousands of jobs in both countries. Upon landing at London's Stansted Airport, Prime Minister Modi said that the visit will go a long way in advancing the economic partnership between India and the UK.
He added that the focus will be on furthering prosperity, growth and boosting job creation for both nations.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi was given a warm welcome by the Indian diaspora, who lined up outside the hotel to catch a glimpse of him. Dressed in colourful Indian attire, they hailed the government's efforts in strengthening ties with the UK.
We shake hands 2 times and he pressed me on my head. I'm very happy and glad to have him here in London because we couldn't meet him in India. Like I was living in India for so many years and now I'm living in UK. So it's my pleasure to meet him and we are very blessed to have him over here. Very, very happy today.
And later in the day today, the Indian Prime Minister is expected to hold bilateral talks with the UK Prime Minister and meet prominent businessmen as well.
Both leaders will sign the much-anticipated free trade agreement, which was announced in May. They will also unveil a renewed comprehensive strategic partnership, the UK-India Vision 2035.
Now, British products such as soft drinks, cosmetics, cars, medical devices, whiskey and some food items as well will have improved access to the Indian market, while on the other hand, Indian products like textiles and electric vehicles will get duty-free access to the UK market. The UK estimates that the trade agreement between UK and India will help accelerate growth of the British economy, as average tariffs will drop from 15% to 3%.
The UK is the 6th largest investor in India with a cumulative investment of $36 billion. India is also a large source of foreign direct investment in the UK with a cumulative investment of close to $20 billion. Bilateral trade between the two countries crossed $55 billion in 2023 to 24, highlighting the significant economic relationship between the two nations.
Besides holding talks with UK Prime Minister, the Indian Prime Minister is also scheduled to meet King Charles before he departs for his next leg of the two-nation visit, which is going to be Maldives.
A grand diplomatic charade unraveled in a quiet suburb of Delhi.
Indian police stormed a supposed embassy of imaginary nations, exposing a bizarre world of fake credentials and fantasy states.
Now, in Ghaziabad, investigators uncovered a fraudulent embassy operating from a nondescript residential building, complete with opulent vehicles sporting bogus diplomatic plates, walls lined with invented insignia, and supposed ambassador, a master of deception, presented himself as the ambassador of 3 self-created countries.
And let's try to spell out the names here. These are imaginary countries, viewers. The nation was West Arctica, as well as equally fictitious states like Coberger, Polvia and Londonia.
Now, the plot was as elaborate as it was absurd. For years, this self-styled diplomat bestowed forged diplomatic IDs, even hosted fake official gatherings.
He paraded through Delhi in these swanky cars, the diplomatic cars which everyone gives way to, and hoodwinking locals and authorities alike. The scam flourished in this strange underworld of self-declared countries.
Now, it wasn't just a petty con, of course. Authorities suspect this was a sophisticated front for money laundering and high-level fraud. The seizure included forged passports, fake appointment letters from global missions, and government-style insignias. Dozens of unsuspecting citizens may have been duped into believing that they were dealing with real international authorities.
And there's been a dramatic turn in the case that has confounded United States. Judge Stephen Hippler has handed down a historic sentence. Brian Coberger will serve 4 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole.
Now, in this brutal stabbing deaths of 4 University of Idaho students, Brian Coberger brutally killed Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Morgan, Shana Kernodle and Ethan Chopin early on the 13th of November 2022. Coberger was also given a 10-year sentence for burglary and assessed $270,000 in fines as well as civil penalties. He has waived his right to appeal.
Last week, President Donald Trump expressed that he wanted Coberger to reveal a motive. However, Coberger did not do so and instead sat passively in the court. When given an opportunity to speak, he respectfully declined it.
Now, in court statements made by friends and relatives of victims range from accounts of terror, anxiety to expression of profound love, loss and fury. Judge Stephen Hippler said that the heartbroken families may never know why Coberger killed their loved ones.
Well, the judge also said that the need to know what is inherently not understandable makes us dependent upon the defendant to provide us with a reason, and that gives him the spotlight, the attention and the power he appears to crave. Investigators told reporters about the hearing that exhaustive efforts failed to find the murder weapon or any connection between Coberger and the students. Authorities used surveillance videos as well, genealogy, cell phone data and online shopping records for a military-style knife and a sheath to tie Coberger to the murders.
Our families did express relief upon receiving justice while acknowledging their loss is beyond repair. They said that they found some solace in seeing the perpetrator being sentenced.
Well, it's almost been 3 years, and today's the end of a long, hard-fought battle. But we have our person, and we have him where he belongs. So for that, we are thankful for all the men and women that put the work together, put this case together, and once it's part of the court system, it was a little ugly, but we got that conviction, and we're glad to be moving on.
Now, Czech high school students are familiarizing themselves with army life.
Czech training programs aim to introduce young people to potential military careers and growing security concerns in Europe.
Now, students were seen donning camouflage helmets, handling firearm, practicing shooting and tactical movements during the exercise. Military chaplain Peter Haska explained that the program's main goal is to showcase army opportunities and teach fundamental soldiering skills to potential recruits.
The main goal of this military voluntary exercise is to show students the possibility of joining the Army, to show what the Army does, what the possibilities are if they decide to do something like this in the future. The basic skills that a soldier should have, we try to show them over the 4 weeks. It also shows that the Army is interested in new soldiers and new people who will know as much as they can about the Army.
An 18-year-old Johanka Korinska said that she joined the training to challenge herself and learn her limits.
I decided to do the military training because I wanted to prove to myself that I can do something like this and that I won't just fade away. I will know my limits, my boundaries. I will learn a lot of new things. I will have a lot of new experiences.
Countries across Eastern Europe have struggled to recruit new soldiers and keep experienced ones in a region where Poland, Hungary, Romania and Slovakia all share a border with Ukraine. Around 14,700 soldiers currently serve in the Czech army, but this number has left units understaffed and unable to reach combat readiness. Hence, the new army training program for youngsters in Czech is aimed to make the country combat ready in case of any uncertainty. Now, while a new US-Japan trade deal has offered some short-term relief to investors, the broader impact of tariff uncertainty is becoming hard to ignore.
Of course, their governments are racing against deadlines to strike deals, but for many industries, the damage is already showing up on the balance sheet.
Now, between the 16th of July and the 22nd alone, companies reported combined annual losses of $6.6 to $7.8 billion, led by auto, aerospace and pharma firms. From rising input costs and delayed investments to disrupted supply chains and shifting trade flows, the economic fallout is spreading across sectors and geographies. Many steelmaking firms reported weak earnings due to tariff-led disruptions. Businesses are reporting pressure on margins as higher costs feed through to operations, and supply chains have been reconfigured not out of strategy here but out of necessity, with many firms now paying more for critical tools and components.
Despite downbeat earnings, global stock markets rallied after the US and Japan announced a trade deal. The agreement stirred hopes of a similar outcome with the EU ahead of the August 1st deadline. But analysts warn the worst may not be over. Trump continues to threaten new sectoral tariffs on chips, pharmaceuticals and metals, with Canada, Brazil and EU still in the crosshairs. Deutsche Bank notes this is far from the end of the tariff wave that's already shaken investor confidence and disrupted supply chains.
Now, as earnings season continues, investors are looking to major reports from Tesla, Alphabet, Nestle, LVMH, Infosys and Hyundai for clarity on how companies are managing rising costs, regulatory shifts and bottlenecks.
With an EU-China summit and US-China talks scheduled soon, global lenders are under pressure to avert further disruption and stabilize trade flows. The United States and the European Union are moving towards a potential trade agreement.
Now, according to the European diplomats, the proposed deal would set a baseline US tariff of 15% on EU goods.
The EU is seeking a deal similar to the one the US signed with Japan, which helped Japan in avoiding higher auto tariffs in exchange for major investment pledges. The deal includes $550 billion in investments and loans, purchase of 100 Boeing planes, and an agreement to boost US agricultural imports. In return, the US dropped tariffs to 15%, and that framework is now influencing negotiations with the EU.
European car makers and exporters are hoping for a similar outcome, but officials in Brussels say Washington has shown limited flexibility so far.
US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said that Japan earned the tariff cut through what he called an innovative financing mechanism unlikely to be matched by other countries. Even as talks continue, the European Commission is preparing for a worst-case scenario. EU members are set to vote on billions in counter tariffs on US goods, with broad support for retaliatory measures.
Meanwhile, EU car stocks rallied in hopes of a breakthrough, even as US markets remain cautious. European Trade Commissioner Maros Sefcovic and US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick are holding talks to avert a major trade rift. Now, the coronavirus pandemic didn't just steal years from our lives, it literally aged our brains by months.
Even if we never caught the virus, that still had an effect on us. Our next story takes a close look at the psychological toll of lockdowns, isolations and uncertainty, which may have inflicted permanent neurological damage on an entire generation, is what studies are finding. Take a look.
For over 2 years, humanity collectively endured a crucible of uncertainty, fear and profound behavioral shifts. Lockdowns confined us. Social interactions dwindled, and a constant low-level hum of anxiety became the background noise of daily life. While the immediate focus rightly centered on vaccine development, hospital capacity and mortality rates, an insidious, less obvious battle was raging within our minds. Using brain scans from a very large database, British researchers determined that during the pandemic years of 2021 and 2022, the brains showed signs of aging, including shrinkage. The research has been published in Nature Communications. What's interesting is that even in the absence of COVID-19 infection, living through the pandemic was associated with accelerated aging of the brain. The implications stretch far beyond academic curiosity. Brain aging typically occurs gradually over decades, not months. The fact that the environmental stress alone could accelerate this process suggests we may have fundamentally underestimated the neurological cost of societal upheaval. The pandemic may be over, but its invisible legacy lives on inside our skulls. Every person who endured lockdowns lost loved ones, or simply existed during those dark years, may be walking around with a brain that's months older than it should be. We survived the virus, but our brains may never fully recover from simply living through the world it created. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
All right, on to sports now. India suffered another injury blow as Rishabh Pant was forced to retire hurt after injuring his right toe while batting.
And India's vice captain was taken off the field on a buggy and has gone for scans now. After India lost Yashasvi Jaiswal and captain Shubman Gill in quick succession, Rishabh Pant added stability to the innings with Sai Sudarshan. The pair was on an unbeaten 72-run stand when Pant went for an audacious reverse sweep off a Chris Wokes Yorker. Pant mistimed the shot as the ball hit his right toe.
Now, England appealed for LBW, but a review revealed Pant got an inside edge. Indian fans breathed a sigh of relief until they saw Pant hobbling. Pant, who was unbeaten on 37, took his boot off as he received on-field treatment. Television replays showed severe swelling on his right leg as a hobbling Pant limped into a buggy before being driven off the field. It's a fresh injury scare for Pant, who suffered a finger injury in the previous test.
Earlier sent to bat first under cloudy skies, Yashasvi Jaiswal and KL Rahul handed India a solid start. They put up a 94-run stand before Rahul was removed by Wokes. Jaiswal departed for 58 soon after as England clawed their way back into the game. Sai Sudarshan's fighting 61, followed by an unbeaten 195 from Ravindra Jadeja, and Shardul Thakur helped the visitors end day one on 264 for 4. Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan were out in Los Angeles for the world premiere of Freakier Friday, the sequel to the 2003 film Freaky Friday.
With only a $20 million budget, 2003's Freaky Friday became a surprise hit, making over $160 million worldwide at the box office, and the movie has had a cult following ever since. More details in this story.
It's the perfect, and you get the formula right, you get the combination right. You move people and you make them laugh, and you leave feeling uplifted.
It felt like it was yesterday, like no time had passed for us. I mean, for me specifically, it was like we could have wrapped the first Freaky Friday and picked up on the Freakier the next day.
And with that, we call it a wrap on this edition of World DNA.
And there will be a short break after this, but before we leave you, here are all the climate stories making headlines across the world. Stay with us. This is WION World is One.